along a couple questions yesterday so we can start to share ideas and resources with one another. Not sure. I know Anthony got a chance to take a look at them. Lisa, did you have a chance to take a look at them as well?
I did not. I'm sorry, I've been busy. There's all kinds of stuff with the holidays, but let me see if I can find what you
Uh,
sent.
no worries, no worries. I'm going to go ahead and post them into the Google Hangout chat right now. And I think they are pretty much like maybe I'm wrong here, but I think that we can they're pretty easy to just recall from what you've done in the past.
And I'm okay on the fly sometimes, so we'll see.
So the first one is just what is your experience with flipped learning? And so we can treat this as a pseudo-Socratic seminar again, where anybody can start and from there. And let me know, because we have these two meeting rooms here and meeting going on. So if you hear any background noise, let me know. Okay. Sure. Yeah, does anybody want to kick us off here with what is your experience with flipped learning?
I don't mind pitching if I've got an idea. I mean, I think it's tremendous. I said it briefly. It was earlier. It's a huge time saver. I mean, in terms of all the theoretical and pedagogic models you can apply within a classroom, it is definitely the best one for time economy. And obviously, teachers always say they don't have enough time. It is phenomenal. So the learners come into the classroom, all their work is ready on a HyperDoc, and then they work their way through it, no problems, and it actually frees you from the front, so there's no teacher talk time, and then you are free to go and help those that need extra help, and the ones that can go along and don't want to be hindered, they are welcome to do so. It is a truly phenomenal pedagogic tool, and some of the contacts I have with some of the Finnish teachers who do the PBL project exclusively, they said it's the best pedagogic valuable model they were ever taught as well. So I've got nothing bad to say about it. It's worked very well. What do you think, Lisa?
Oh, I agree. I do a lot of PBL. I have students work a lot on their own on HyperDocs. I'll make a formative so that they're just going through at their own pace, and I'll scaffold along for them. I've even done where, they have to do some editing on a paper, like their last paper was a narrative. And I did a video, it was a 10-minute video with me explaining how to punctuate dialogue. And I showed them dialogue that wasn't punctuated, then I punctuated it. I did a little video, and I said, you need to watch my 10-minute video at some point in time between now and when you turn in your paper. And there they had the lesson, but it was never me up at the board telling everybody at once. Yeah. They could watch it, they could rewatch it. One kid said, I watched you like 30 times. You should have put this like on YouTube and you would have had all these. And I was like, well, but he said, like, I just never learned it. And I got to watch it over and over again and learn it for the first time. So I think it does help those learners that, they might need it more than just like one time to hear it.
Mm. It's terrific for examination sort of revision as well, because they can just go back to it. It's all there. And in terms from a teaching perspective, you've already created the content. All you have to do is tweak it. It's terrific. Yeah, it's really terrific.
I agree.
So I'm not sure if you guys noticed, but I hope this is not distracting. I'm just taking notes of what you guys say.
Oh no, that's fine.
One question I do have for you, Lisa, is so do you did you show that instructional video during class, or did you have them watch it at home?
They could watch it in class. Some students put their headphones in and they watched it. Others finished their narrative and then watched it at home. It was all to their leisure, like whatever they wanted to do. And I even, whenever they turned in their narratives, and I still saw mistakes, I even referenced it in the Kaizana whenever I did their grading. I referenced the video again, like, did you watch? And I put the link in again so that they knew. And I said it was posted in Google Classroom on this day, so that they knew that there was, there wasn't anything that wasn't available for them. It was there for them. So, you know, and then I let them revise still, but with the knowledge of, I gave this to you, you had the choice of watching it. And it, you know, many of the kids did watch it because they like that idea.
Hello?
So, yeah.
Sorry, I missed Lisa's. I heard her talking and then it went blank.
Yeah,
Have I missed something?
froze for a minute there on the screen. I wondered. I was like, wow, he's not blinking.
I think I can paraphrase.
Sure.
That's okay, Lisa. It's really cool. Lisa's she allowed her students to watch the video in class or at home based on pretty much what's best for them, and it was just really great to have that instructional video whenever they needed it throughout over multiple days. Sure. That's what I gained. But is that a form of flipped learning that people have explored a lot in the past, is like also allowing students to pick when they watch the videos, whether it's in class or at home? Is that?
Well, that's an interesting one. I don't know. Is that addressed to Lisa or to me?
Either one of you, I guess. You guys have more experience.
Well, there are different ways of doing it. Like there's always the risk if it's say a task that they have to do at home that they don't do it. That's always the risk when you do something like this. But then what's nice is actually you build a culture around that, so that obviously the learners turn up to the class. If they haven't done it and they feel a bit embarrassed, then they rarely do it again, because nobody wants to feel like a wally, you know. So that actually that problem sort of solves itself. In terms of, well, we have at my school, we also have things called E-days. I think they're quite common in the States too. So the learners stay at home for a day and they complete all their tasks via, I don't know, Google Classroom or a doc or G Suite. G Suite's quite popular. And that works quite nicely. But even in a general lesson, the learners will come in the door. Everything is already prepared. All my work, this is quite nice actually, from the teacher's perspective, all my work is done outside the classroom. Their work is done inside the classroom, so then we're free to go and see what they're doing. I do like that particularly because you can actually see, that's why formative is so wonderful, because you can actually see in real time whereabouts they are, you know, in terms of their progression. And, you know, that's when you can send them their little comments and things, but, you know, to guide them. But I mean, there's no limits to flipped classroom really, and in flipped learning, you can use it across the board, but it's very important to get that culture right so that you don't get to the end of the quarter when you have learners who are, you know, completely mind blown with confusion because they didn't do what they were supposed to do. But provided you've got that culture going, I mean, the flipped classroom can work if they're doing it at home, if they're ill. That's actually very nice. I noticed this year, and when I started doing it in January, the learners, when they're ill, you find them at home on their laptops. You know, dedication to you. It's terrific. Right. But then, yeah. So I think it works on all levels as long as you make it very clear in your sort of learning environment. Let's say in your classroom at the start that you have to do this, otherwise you will struggle. And then you know, it's not spoon feeding them. They realize they are responsible for their own learning, and then yeah, it's Christmas.
I agree. I think with the watching a video at their own leisure or something like that, that is one of the ways that you can do flipped learning. I know that there's a math teacher. He'll do the lesson that they're supposed to do their homework with. He'll flip learn it for them so that they can watch it again in Google Classroom, and him explaining some of the first questions on the homework so that they can sort of watch him do it again if they forgot, because that was always my thing. Like in class, I was like, yeah, I got this. I get home and I'd open up the book and I'm like, what in the world is this? Like, I don't remember learning this. This is something alien, because it had been, you know, 5 classes later and a bus ride home and dinner, and then opening up a book to, I don't remember all of this. So, you know, it's the same thing for the kids. They appreciate, and I mean, if you use it, like he said, if Anthony said, like, you use it as a culture, and you have students understand that culture, they'll use it, and they'll really appreciate the extra work you're doing to put in those safe holds for them, so that they're actually learning, and that they can go at any time and work on it. Like some of my students, they don't even have Wi-Fi, but with the G Suite that we have, they can go offline and they can work on anything offline and come back, go online and send it to Google Classroom, and I have it. So a lot of the kids will say, and I mean on-grade students, you know, they'll say to me, not just honors, they'll say to me, I'm going to do this at home. I'm like, okay, you can go ahead and finish it at home. You know, they love that I leave the formatives where they can come back in and they can change things and they can redo. They're always like, can I just like go back in and see if I could do better on that multiple choice? Of course, let's see if you can. So they like that opportunity.
And it appeals to different sort of learner styles, like the learners that like to sleep in late and they work better in the afternoon. And then you have the other opposite end of the scale, like me. I wake up crazy early because I'm far more productive in the morning. And then, yeah, it's wonderful actually in terms of that. And we've talked about the video pretty much exclusively as the flipped learning tool. Every learner in this modern age is a visual learner these days. I mean, everybody would far rather watch a 3-minute clip and have someone actually at the front speaking to them, because it's cool. Technology is cool, you know. It's the currency of the playground. So I think, yeah, in terms of learner engagement and everything you said, yeah, it just works flawlessly.
And you were saying you guys have like a holiday day. We don't have those, but we do have, we're the first high school to pilot. If we get a snow day this year, we actually will be able to send all of the assignments out on Google Classroom, and we won't have to make up any days. Like,
wow,
we'll be excused from those days because we provided work. Again, we told the kids, if we're in that situation, the work is not going to be overwhelming. You know, enjoy yourself on your day, but we'll still have evidence that they did something.
Definitely, and it's a time saver. That's one of the things I think every teacher on earth would agree on. There's so much content to get through in terms of, you know, a very, very heavy curriculum. But when you're given the opportunity to flip something, you can teach them far, far more in so much less time, and then everybody wins. Then you have more time for revision, to go over the answers. So you can actually almost guarantee that everybody there will know what they're supposed to. Yeah, it's terrific.
Yeah, I also feel there's a lot of teachers that will say, you know, they feel like they have to get to something. They have to get finished with something. They must do this. The kids always like this part. I have to do it. And the more doing the flipped learning or the PBL or HyperDocs or whatever, I just feel like I'm not in that situation. And that I can always sit there and say, you know, how can I do this so that it works and I don't need a whole week to do this, but I could do this in 2 days? Or can I mean, sometimes I even take a textbook and, you know, I'll condense it down and take some stuff away, so that all the boring stuff, so that we don't have to like sit through 7 chapters of the following action. Let's do something where each group reads, you know, a chapter, and then we just do a comic strip or whatever, and then we talk about it, you know, do stuff like that. And so I think it's really nice because I don't feel the pressure of, oh, but I have to get to this, or I just feel like I do have more time, like you said, to do what I feel that is important, because I know what the kids are doing. They're going through skills and information that they're going to be able to translate out into the community. Because I'm showing them what they can do and utilize the technology, not just use it.
Sure. Yeah, real learner-centered environments. That's awesome.
Yeah, and something that resonated with me is I think it also, I had never used flipped learning when I was teaching, but it seems like a great way to let students take ownership over processing information on their own and on their own time, but then also in the classrooms facilitating that learning that they really do need support with. And emotional skills, the soft skills that they need, the collaborative skills that they need to really work together with it. It's really cool. I think the next step here would be great if we could just come up with a couple questions that we want to explore together as a group in both Twitter and in the Formative Community Center. But before we get to talking about how we're going to do you guys have any questions that you'd like to explore together about flipped learning? It could be maybe come from any challenges. I know I heard a couple of challenges you guys mentioned. Things like parts, aspects of it you want to explore more, but let's just throw out questions now. It doesn't even have to be questions. They're just things that you want to or aspects of flipped learning you'd like to explore together.
Well, I'd love to explore. I think Lisa and I share a great love of the PBL environments as well, and flipped learning. Again, I only rigorously and exclusively started using it in January of this year, and now I'm hooked hopelessly. And I'm also a big fan of the project-based learning environments. In our third quarter, I know our curriculums are, our academic years are slightly different, between us. That our academic year starts in January and finished just now. And yours is a September, I think, isn't it? It's the same as England. It's September until July. So what I'd love to do is do a collaborative project across the world between schools using flipped learning, the skills that we've learned, as well, and share how we've used these different, if it's a hyperdoc or if it's a video, because it's not always the same. I mean, the way I've done it in terms of flipped learning, I always start with a video almost exclusively because it's quite a nice way, and I'm a bit silly and I do a bit of humor and this, that, and the other to get them going, and then the scaffolding begins. So after they have the video, then I've got a few questions. Very straightforward question, could be multiple choice, could be true or false, and then gradually they get more challenging, and then the learners can either answer these formatives in groups or individually, depending on what I'm expecting them to accomplish. So it's always about the output, then you work your way back. So what I'd like to do, if it's not really a question, it's just sort of putting it out there, I would love to do a collaborative project between different countries, utilizing this, our understanding of formative as well as our understanding of the pedagogy behind project-based learning and problem-based learning and flipped learning. That would be a part of a vision, I suppose. That would be quite something I'd be very interested in doing.
That would be interesting too. I wonder if we could make a list of different things we use for flipped learning, and then come up with something that we could see if the formative community would like to join at a certain point. And I mean, for some, depending upon, like you said, you have different semesters or modules or whatever we go by, modules or marking periods, that you could have them come up with those things in a sense to, I guess what I'm trying to say is come up with a way that you could make every person be doing it, but maybe a few people at a time. But we see by the end of a certain calendar, whatever we decide, how did it work? How could we tweak it? How could it be better next time? Because there's all kinds of different things. You could, like you said, make a hyperdoc and embed several different things that students do and different things that we could use that they could get on a Padlet or a Flipgrid or something like that, that we're all going on different things where we could talk and then do a formative, and do different things like that and see what works.
I mean, even if I'm just trying to think of sort of a commonality between all the threads. I mean, we could even do something, we're both English educators, right? So we could even do something, we could say a different, I don't know, an educator from a different country. So say we've got 5 different countries. I mean, we've got a nice collection of certified educators from all over the place. So if we did a culturally entrenched poem from each of the countries, and then we did an analysis of how we would approach teaching a type of poem and what we would expect the learners to do and get out of it, and then we could share them, and then that could also, we could even combine them, in fact, actually we could even blend them and combine them into one formative at the end, and then see what the learners make of it, because then they're exposed to not just essentially the poet's intention. That's the be all end all, really. What was the poet trying to say at that moment, and why? And that would be very interesting if that was scaffolded between, like-minded educators, English educators
I love that
worldwide.
idea. Yeah, I like the idea. Sorry to interrupt, but I like the idea of having the poems.
Sure.
Like if you say, like if you have a cultural, sorry. So if you have a cultural like poem that you perhaps introduce, you could do it flipped learning wise, like a little video where you show the poem, the background of it, and you just give some sort of area for the kids to start with. And then you let them go into what they've learned. We could even teach a strategy during the poem. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is a poem, and this is how you do TP cast, or diddles, or something else that people teach, just to show them like a strategy, and then see if they understand it by the strategy alone. Because if they get different teachers teaching it different ways, they might understand it better if they see different. The different poems.
Definitely.
And it'd be neat because they would know that different teachers are collaborating and trying to teach the same concept with each other.
Totally, and the kids would love it anyway because it's going beyond the realms and beyond the walls of the classroom. It's got a real world implication. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do that.
Yeah, I think we could.
So I'm just this is a lot of great ideas. I'm thinking about this, and just to summarize what I've heard so far, seems like we've arrived at this idea of perhaps creating different flipped instructional videos for cultural poems that explain using different strategies for students.
And then where they've come from,
and then allowing the students in different countries to take them, and perhaps even they I'm thinking this is a really cool idea. I think you could have a different poem for Cape Town, and then for Hagerstown, another poem, but they're teaching the same strategy. And so students get exposure to those different teachers and those different ways of applying those strategies to poems. And then seeing how they do on different activities and assessments on, formative, Flipgrid, different tools. Is that what I'm hearing? Just to summarize it.
Yeah. And Flipgrid would be very good for an exit ticket, because then it gives the kids an opportunity to voice their opinions on not just the poems themselves, but whether they thought the initiative was successful and what they liked about it, and so for future development,
Gotcha. Cool. Just in terms of it, I think just thinking about the goal of engaging with the communities that we belong to. Twitter is a great vehicle for connecting teachers across countries, as well as the Formative Community Center. And so what do you guys think first step would be to this? I could just throwing this out there, sorry.
Well, I think
I
think Anthony,
go ahead.
With what he's saying, if we could write something up and then put it on the community, on the formative community, asking English teachers, but we could even leave it out for other teachers as well. I mean, ELL teachers or anything like that, if they wanted to. Social studies, since, there might be a historical poem or something like that, and then see who's interested. We might have to break it into different formatives, because we might have a big response. We might have a little response. Then once we get our formative community, if we feel we have enough for the first run, maybe we should just do that and then do a Twitter announcement if we feel we can take in more, because you're going to have a huge formative if you open up the floodgates, or you might not have a big response at the community, but then if you send it out on Twitter, you'd have more of a response.
Yeah, maybe it should. So yeah, these are very all valid points. I'm just trying to think here. Well, you also have the formative chat. So if you wanted to just get an idea of who's involved, I mean, I know formative chat is an inconceivable hour in Cape Town, but I'm sure I can make a plan. Because if it was punted, just to get interest, as you say, to see who would be interested in a big. We don't even have to tell them that much. Actually, it could be. I love the element of surprise. I use that in my lessons. We could even just create an example of our own, or maybe not, or just give them criteria. These are sorts of things we're after. You could even use I think the chat would be quite nice, because that gives us an idea of who would be interested. Then they can be approached privately, either through Twitter or preferably the community, because it's such a wonderful, multifaceted platform. I love it. Then we can go from there, because if we wowed, imagine if it was just three of us, it would be, and then we punted it. Imagine what the response would be after that if we did it. If we did a nice job, it could be exponential. You never know.
Okay, this is cool. Just in terms of the timeline, I know that next week is super. I think, Lisa, you said that you might be available next week in terms of meeting, but just in general for the timeline of this, be great to put a time frame on these things. And so, I think what I'm hearing is like the first step would be seeing who's interested, on the community center and on Twitter. And maybe, I think you both have valid points here. Is like Twitter can be a great place to see who's interested. And at the same time, before we jump headlong into this, we might want to make sure that we just get enough people. And so maybe our first step is really finding out other educators that we know within the community center and within Twitter to get on board with this. And I think to get on board with this, we kind of need maybe a one-sheeter, or just, like how I put together for the formative certified, Lisa, just advertising that. If we had sort of a one-sheeter to share with them so they understand. And so we're all aligned in terms of the goal of this. Right? Does that sound good, or what do you guys think? Necessary?
I just love new ideas. This sounds cool. It's going further. It's a nice idea.
Yeah, I didn't anticipate this.
It should be fun, because you never know where these ideas are going to go. And everyone's two heads are better than one, 10 are better than two. I think it's a great idea. And so when are you, in terms of the time frame you're thinking? Because I know, as we say, we're in a sort of a bit of a challenging time, I suppose, coming up to Christmas and New Year. What are you thinking? Are you thinking like the January, or are you thinking before to punch this?
I'm thinking that we could spend this time putting together that one sheeter, like maybe within the next week, and then we start to share it with our colleagues and people that we know on Twitter and the community center. Okay. We could create a community center topic out of it, but also we could reach out to people there through private messaging. And then that first week after New Year's, I think it's like January 2nd, or just, like later on in that first week with New Year's is when we could make sure we have like a good cohort of people to participate in this. Do we know how many people we'd want to be in this to start? I
don't know. What do you think, Lisa? It's nice if they're in different areas. I know many of the first cohort are from the States, but we've got a couple. There's that one lady from Australia. It's nice if there's a rep from different, very, very different areas, so then the sample, the data sample, will be more interesting, you know, because it'll be more diverse. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, it depends on what we get, but like if we get like a lot of people, we would either do like a Flipgrid or a Padlet where the students could go to that's embedded into the Go Formative and maybe choose like who were the educators you chose and have them, have their names under so that they could say who they chose to watch and then what they gathered from each poem. Do you know what I mean? Like we might have to do something like that. Have you ever, I've done that sometimes where the kids are, they look at a whole bunch of things, but then they tell me what they've chosen. And so in Google Classroom, I send out the formative or whatever, and it only has what they need in it. Do you know what I mean? Like the poems that are in there,
I see.
they could,
sure.
And we could do the choosing one day and then sending out the formatives the next. Like their groups would choose, but they had to choose like a certain segment. And then we'd be able to just drop them in and have, the same questions underneath each poem so that you could just duplicate it, but then change out the videos.
Would they be the same questions if you're teaching different strategies though, or different?
It might be because all of them point to tone or theme sometimes or mood. So
okay,
you might have, but like the way you come about it is differently with each strategy. We'd have to decide what strategies we wanted to teach. Do we want to teach the strategies that point to the same things, or do we want to teach, or just one strategy with multiple poems?
I think whatever's easier to start, honestly, for people and for you guys. Like, what do you think it's easier if we just start with tone or one skill or multiple? What do you think, Anthony?
This is also different. This is potentially challenging because I think, Lisa, you teach grade 10. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, see, I'm teaching grade 7 at the moment, and I'm thinking, although I teach the grade 7s, like the grade 9 language curriculum, because they handled it. I did it a couple of years ago and they were fine. The poetry, in terms of, I'm just trying to think the use, but then maybe it won't be for use for grade 7, perhaps. I don't mind, doing something else. I'm very open-minded.
What are grade 7s looking when they look at poetry?
Well, they obviously have to identify the different forms of figurative language. That's the first thing. So they have to demonstrate that they understand what they are and what each of the terms mean. Because essentially, in South Africa, grade 8 is the first year of high school, but my school starts them a year early. So grade 7 is the first year of high school. So they're still very young, in terms of what they do. But they are expected to know what a metaphor is, what a simile is. Then obviously you stretch them to extended metaphor, extended simile, that sort of thing. But then so they have to not only be able to sort of identify, but they have to be able to explain it. And then I like blending that with the intention of the poet. And I know this is usually left for FET. Well, in South Africa, it's the higher levels. Then you can look into what would have motivated the poet to have this attitude, of whatever concept they're discussing. So I think we could mix it up because I like a challenge. I like giving challenges.
And have you ever heard of SIFT?
Yes, we do SIFT.
So we could even use SIFT as a strategy.
Okay.
That, you have the figurative language, you have the imagery, sure, symbolism. Yeah. I've seen young kids be able to latch on to that without much problem.
Okay.
So that's strategy. But how do we teach SIFT with different poems that are more regionally too? Like, because you're definitely going to bring something in, and it depends upon your region what the history is that you pick up on, or the figurative language, depending upon what region you're from as well, I think.
Sure. I mean, if we're talking about planning how we're going to do this, are we talking about how we're going to get interest from people at the moment, or are we talking about the content we're going to create to showcase to the people? Because if we're talking about the showcasing, then yeah, we could totally do that. You could pick a poem from the States that's very common, talk about, I don't know, common themes and common sort of I don't know, the atmosphere, the nature of being an American or something, very patriotic, or maybe juxtaposing, going against it or something. And then I did find an example from South Africa, and then let's have a think. We could actually list the sorts of questions that we're going to do, maybe over a Google Doc or something, and then we could apply those to the poem, come up with the answers, throw it into a formative with the different, obviously, scaffolding, different types of questions. What do you think about that? And then we could just try it out.
That would be good.
I
like the doc because we could have a working doc that we're sort of putting down our ideas, saying, look what I found. Would this be a good poem? This is the stuff that I could say before actually making, the flipped learning video.
Just
sorry, carry on.
I was thinking that to encourage, I know we're in these individual teams, but if other certified educators want to get involved, I was thinking of posting this, broadcast as just in our certified educator channel underneath, All About Us. And then the conversation could happen within just that one thread. Does Google Doc have other benefits that would be better for discussing things?
I think the only reason I was suggesting a Google Doc is so that, in real time, Lisa and I could, add to it, as she was saying, the thoughts and ideas that we're coming up with. So the Google Doc will be sort of the blank space where we're going to come up with the ideas. And then obviously formative would be the end result. That's what I was assuming from that. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, before we actually publish it out to people, so that they're not like, they don't know what they're talking about. This is rambling. We can do it all behind the rambling and then have it all cohesive for an audience.
Gotcha. And I think, when I post this in the community center, that could be the thread where you're like, how you usually have like a thread where like, did you check that out? Or, I just posted something in the Google Doc, and if you could take a look at that place for that. But cool. I think so. If I'm understanding it, with the Google Doc, you guys are coming up with a sample basically to show other educators before actually recruiting them. Is that right?
Yeah. It doesn't even have to be that long. I'm just thinking I mean, again, we're just spitballing here. The formative that we create together, it doesn't even have to be that many questions. Obviously, you don't want to blast a child with a 70 point or 70 question formative. If we decide on the sorts of questions we want to ask them via the SIFT method, that's the one we're going to go with, and we ask pretty much the same questions for your poem and then for mine, and we have that embedded, each of those texts, and then just as a final, I don't know, 3 or 4 questions, it's comparing the two poems directly based on the theme of culture, or I mean, we could even do something on symbolism or something later on, but it's just, it's just sort of to wet the whistle a little bit, to see what can be achieved. The same questions on the first poem and the second, but then what does that mean? What do each of those, how do they differ, and how do they agree at the end? We could be quite creative with that, actually. That could be quite nice.
Mm-hmm.
So are you guys going to, sorry, I think what I'm hearing is like, maybe you guys each come up with a poem that you explore the SIFT strategy with separately, and then what I'm ultimately envisioning from this Google Doc is at the end, we've got 2 formatives with the 2, or even just 1 formative with the 2 instructional videos, one from Lisa, one from Anthony, and then the questions that students can use to demonstrate their understanding of the SIFT strategy.
Yes.
Would this, just throwing this out here too, would you guys be giving them a separate reading passage below the instructional videos, or I'm sorry, a different poem to practice with, or would they just be going off of the poems that they saw in the video?
Well, I suppose there are a couple of ways you could do this. I was actually also thinking, well, the way I was perceiving it is there were going to be two poems, Lisa's and mine, and they would be embedded. They don't necessarily have to be in the video. They can be. They could be us reading them, or they could be with a backtrack, soundtrack, or something. But the flipped element could even be us both speaking. You know, we could edit it, cut it together. The flipped bit could be actually the video explaining what we want them to do across the board of both poems. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we'll also explain. Good morning, ladies and good morning, students. This is, we are your two teachers talking today. We're going to approach the SIFT method on two poems from different sides from different points on the planet. And then by the end of this, the output is we want you to be able to exemplify your understanding of the SIFT method and be able to apply that to culturally specific poems, something like that.
Right, and then that's where we could get other people to share.
Yeah.
Their poems and their culturally specific poems and why they are. And that could be another, it could be a series of, they build on one another progressively. You scaffold it, you work them through it, see if they get it, and then let them off on their own to find some on that whatever space we put it on. And then they demonstrate how they understand it now.
Sure.
Cool. Well, I'm going to go ahead and create that. The couple follow-up things that I'll do. I will post this broadcast within the Certified Educator group with just all of the things, or not everything, but a summary of what you guys had shared in terms of ideas and resources and this project. And then I'll also just create a quick Google Doc where you guys can start planning this. And I think, Lisa, you had said that next week works for you in terms of meeting. I think that's still a good idea, just so that.
What date is that?
Sorry.
What date is that?
I think it was same. I think we were talking Monday.
Okay.
But it would be, or actually, I'm sorry, it wouldn't be Monday. It was Wednesday, I think. Sorry, it's not Christmas.
Was it Wednesday?
I think it was Wednesday, and you said that you could make it. I think it was at. I think I had suggested the same time, 3:30. But I know, Anthony, it's been tough for you, and so I was wondering if we could possibly meet in the morning, Lisa, on Wednesday.
Yeah, I thought it was 10 o'clock. I was almost positive it was 10. I'll have to look.
No, I think you're right. Okay.
We could do that.
Okay.
So is that the 5 o'clock South Africa time?
I think so. I think 10 a.m. EST to Cape Town time.
Okay. All right, I've got to go. But happy birthday again, Anthony, in a few minutes. And
Thank you very much.
David.
Awesome.
Nice to meet you.
See you later, Lisa.
See you in the morning. All right. Bye.
Bye, Lisa. Cool. Well, yeah, I was just going to say, for the follow-up going into our next meeting, I think a good goal would just to be to have, that showcase ready for our next meeting, so we can talk more about our strategy for recruiting people and showing it to them.
Yeah. So when you send that Google Doc to us both, I won't be doing any of it on my birthday, but I will the following days. What I was thinking is, if we've just got that's the wonderful thing about the doc. We can literally say this is exactly how we want to do it, because there are 100 ways to skin a cat. And from what we were just discussing there in terms of the video, the introductory video, we could make it a real wow factor. That's the key, I think, to getting buy-in from educators and learners, so they can also see the application of what we're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
So for next week, then I'm just trying to think. So I've got a poem, and I've got some ideas of what kind of questions in terms of the SIFT method we want to apply to each of the poems, and then we'll throw it together, just share, do, because that's the wonderful thing about the the formative. We'll just continuously update it and then share it with each other, and then we're ready to go.
Yeah, that sounds good. Did you want me to create a Google Doc, or is it better for you guys to do that? Share with me.
It'd be quite nice if you could do it, because then you can also see where we're up to.
Yeah.
And then, because we all have editing rights, obviously, and then we can, and then you can also write questions and tell us, are we meeting our deadlines?
Right.
That'd be quite useful if you want to, if you're able to.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited.
Cool. Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Awesome. Well, get some sleep, and very excited. Very excited about this. But
cool. Thanks a lot, David. Always a pleasure.
Happy birthday. Almost.
Thank you. In 36 minutes. Thank you very much. Bye.
All right. Bye.